I think everyone here knows Ubiquiti pretty much. I'll just do a real quick introduction. I'll try to keep it pretty short so we can get into the main focus of this meeting today. But if you guys know, UniFi is a very fast growing product line. Ubiquiti, we started out in the outdoor wireless space, but we've around 2010 we moved into came out with our first access point, and from then until today, we're now the largest vendor. We ship more APs than any other vendor in the world. So in just a matter of 15 years, we're now a market leader in wireless, and our product, our full stack UniFi solution, which is this end-to-end IT solution, has really matured and is capable of handling all these different aspects of the IT management experience. And I think, the way we've grown so quickly without having a sales team, which I'm like as close as a salesperson you get at Ubiquiti, but we don't really have salespeople, and that's not my background either. We've been able to grow so quickly because we're a little bit different than everyone else. And, these are kind of our three core pillars of our company. First, we try to always deliver quality hardware that's affordable, accessible, looks nice. We have an innovative software experience that's very accessible and easy to use. So even if you're new to networking or to physical security, the products really help you get your bearings and help you figure out how to manage your system. And the third kind of pillar of our business and why we're growing, a big part of why we're growing so quickly, in addition to those strengths, is our cloud management. All of our UniFi products come with free cloud management, and that's without any licensing. So a lot of vendors in the space charge licensing, require you to pay them a annual fee to keep the device operating. We don't do that, and we try to cut out any recurring costs from this process. So that's kind of what makes us UniFi. And at this point, we have this. We started in the network space with UniFi Network. That includes our access points, our switches, our cloud gateways, and we have this really mature solution that's able of handling full enterprise deployments, stadiums. We have full NBA stadiums running our products. This last week, if you haven't seen it yet, we have a new case study site that shows you all the places that UniFi is currently being deployed. Check that out, casestudies.ui.com. If we get a minute, I'll show you guys on the call. But it's really exciting because you can kind of see that we're being used in all sorts of environments at any scale. So now UniFi, as opposed to maybe 10 years ago, we can really capable full stack solution of being able to handle anything you throw at us on the network side. Also, UniFi Protect has been a really strong product, and it's grown a lot. This is our video security platform. We have a large portfolio that's very matured. We have lots of different options for whatever your price point is. UniFi Access, our door access control solution, integrates really well with UniFi Protect, and is really easy to set up. And I think many of you probably are deploying our network products. Some of you may be doing UniFi Access, but this is a really fast-growing category, and a lot of integrators out there are getting a lot of extra business from deploying these products. So I do recommend you take a look at that if you're not familiar. UniFi Talk, we just released a new generation of phones, and we have all sorts of new exciting features to talk about on UniFi Talk. As well as UniFi Connect, which is our sort of IoT platform and digital signage, digital displays, EV chargers. This platform is also a fast-growing category, and there's also some really interesting use cases like retail digital signage in a retail space, check-in kiosk in a hotel, things like that. Let's go ahead and move on. Like I said, I don't want to spend a lot on the intro, but you guys can see that UniFi just keeps becoming more and more. Like what we do now is always growing, and these are all the different areas that we're currently filling in the IT, providing solutions to the IT space, and this is always growing. So you can look forward to this year. I'm sure we'll have a few new icons to add on to this graphic, new things that we're going to be doing. And that's the exciting thing with UniFi. No matter what we do, we try to have the same philosophy, same approach. This could be an easy experience to manage. So some of our, our focus and how we're trying to eliminate those IT pain points, we try to make everything again license-free, scalable, easy to use, and very actionable. And we also like to build in a lot of sophisticated tools for those advanced users. So this is a product that anyone can use. But if you're more experienced and you have that experience, you also get more value out of using the advanced tools we provide. Like like you can do packet captures through our application now. If you need to troubleshoot a network issue where there's maybe certain traffic seems to be being dropped on your network, you can do packet captures through the interface. We keep adding advanced features like that help you empower more advanced administrators as well. So let's move on now. Design Center. What is the Design Center? Design Center is a really powerful solution that allows you to do a lot of different things. The big thing that you'll be doing here is designing your UniFi deployments, including anything we talked about already, those different categories we mentioned, like UniFi network, the access points, the switches, the gateways, our UniFi Protect with our cameras, UniFi Access with our door access control solution, and so on. All of our products you can place on these and design these and put these on a floor plan and get an idea of what to expect before you deploy the products. This allows you to simulate the device performance and coverage on a real floor plan. So this is a great opportunity for whenever you're getting ready to do a new deployment with UniFi, you're trying to decide between the 3 different units. Take a look on the floor plan, see how a different access point model affects your coverage. See what see what it looks like to have a 10 gig LAN infrastructure as opposed to a 2.5 gig. Try these different things out, test them out. You can use this tool to be able to do that and to get an idea of how it's going to work out. You can also visualize things like camera angles, which we'll show you in a little bit, that sort of thing. You can build materials for your customer deployments or for your deployments. You can take that bill of materials, go to FlyTech and say, hey, we want to order these products. What of these do you have in stock? Do you have any alternatives for those that maybe you don't have in stock? You can provide that to them. You can also validate like deployment concerns like, do we have enough PoE budget for all of our devices? We do automatically check that through this product, and it's a good way for you to get a sanity check. A lot of times, that's what a lot of people want with me from my pre-sales assistance is to just be take a look over of a deployment and make sure it's going to work out all right. And really, what's great about this tool is it allows you to do that automatically with the help of our tool here. You can also generate your own sales proposal. There's an option to export a PDF where you can actually take this, give it to a customer, show them, or maybe if it's for your home, you can present it to your wife, get approval for that, or for your husband, you can present it to them, get approval for the deployment. This is a nice, it outlines all the different, what the deployment's going to look like topology wise, the ports that are going to be plugged into what. It gives you lots of information, this report that kind of, in just 15 minutes, you can generate a full sales report with all the bill of materials, a topology generated, a simulated coverage, and all of that with your own branding on it and everything. It's like, it's pretty amazing. You can do that in like 15 minutes at no cost. And that's just a good way for you to show that you're doing your due diligence to your customers. So I think if you use the Design Center, I'm confident you'll have better success at selling UniFi products, whoever it is you're selling to. So let's go on. 1 second here. Let's talk about how to get started. So if you guys want to follow along right now, I'm going to be going through a demo in a minute, but I'm just going to do a few slides to show you the different capabilities, and then we'll do our own real-time Design Center deployment example. So if you go to design.ui.com, that's where the Design Center is, and you can log in with your Ubiquiti account. And what's cool about this is you can actually use this for collaboration. If you have colleagues at your company that you work together on UniFi deployments, you can invite them to each project as a collaborator. You can share these floor plans with your customer. They can make changes to this proposed layout and update you that way. It's really geared towards collaboration, and we want you to use it however you need to be successful. But if you start at the Design Center, design.ui.com, you can save your designs and keep everything that you're working on. So even if you close out of the window, forget what you're working on, like I always do when I'm working on something, you get too many tabs and you forget where you're at. Even if that's the case, you'll save your design automatically and keep it going. So when you need to come back to it tomorrow, it's there and waiting for you. So using the wizard, you can start out from this view here on the right. You can see here we offer these little templates here where you can just click a button there to start with an office deployment, a full stack UniFi deployment with all of our different products. You can modify the base bill of materials we provide. It's just providing a basic template for you for each of these scenarios. Now, we know there's a huge range of office deployments. Like you might be a small business with 5 employees, or you might be an office deployment with 500 employees. UniFi can handle all of that. That's no problem. But each of these deployments is going to look quite a bit different. And so these templates are just basic examples that show you what you could use. But of course, you can feel free to start with that. Modify that to your heart's content, do whatever you want to be able to shape it to what your needs are. But that's one option if you go with these wizards. And that is a fine option. You can choose that, get started that way. That's a good way to getting an idea of, what different products work together and how they do that. But I recommend, if you're going to if you have an actual deployment in mind, you want to do a floor plan and all that, what I'd recommend doing instead is at the bottom of the screen at design.ui.com, you'll see a button to create a new project. Click on that button. And then you'll give a chance to upload your floor plan and get started designing. And and putting these products into an actual deployment and simulate that performance. All right, let's go on. The nice thing, you go upload, I uploaded an example floor plan here of an office. What's cool about this is that you can, once you've uploaded this floor plan, you can draw the scale to indicate, to basically make sure that our software is aligned with exactly, what we should expect the spaces like in real life. So what we can do is, when you know the length of a wall, you can hit the button at the beginning once you upload your floor plan to be able to set the scale, and then you can draw along one of those walls, or as I've done in the top left there, I drew a line there and indicated that on the floor plan that was 24 feet that wall was. Now, sometimes you don't have all the information. What's kind of nice about this, if a customer just saying your floor plan, you can always use doors as like a way of providing a base estimate, because doors are typically going to be, you have standard door width. You can use the standard door dimensions to be able to provide a basic approximation to this in the absence of actual more detailed information. I do recommend getting that detailed info though, because you never know if there's if there is some weird dimensions in an office or things like that. It's just helpful to have the exact measurements. But most floor plans will have that. You can just draw on any dimension on this floor plan and then indicate what the scale is. And from then on, all the things that the products we put on the access points will all be geared around the actual, it will calculate it based on the scale that you've indicated. So you can also then, once you've done that, you can draw your walls, which in this case, I went ahead and drew concrete walls all throughout the exterior of the building. And then we have this feature where you can draw individual rooms. It's really quick. I did this in I'd say probably a minute and a half. It took me to draw the walls that I would need to have on a floor plan in this case. But once you get the hang of it, it's very simple and very easy to do. And I'll show you how it works in real time. Now, once we've drawn those walls, you can see here, I can place the access points, and what we can do based on the materials that we specify that these walls are made of, which typically in a US environment, which I think most people based on the time zone are probably representing the US customers. What you'll find is that most of our interior rooms are made up of drywall, and an exterior it can vary on the material. Sometimes it'll be stone, sometimes it'll be concrete, sometimes it'll be brick. But we've got the ability where you can draw the walls and specify the materials so that you get the right, so it actually simulates how much the signal will be lost through each of these different materials. So this means that if you have a large concrete pillars inside of a deployment, like let's say it's in a museum, you can draw those, indicate that they're concrete, and you'll get a actual simulated effect of how much that's blocking signal for the access points on one side of it. What does it do to the signal on the other side? We simulate that, and so be as precise as you can with those with the composition materials. Now, things like doors, doors are wood and drywall typically have a pretty similar impact on Wi-Fi. It's very close, very marginal difference. So a lot of times, if you're worried about drawing every single door there in wood, I would just say don't worry about that. The other thing is, if you're gonna have exterior coverage on the outside of the building, you can draw the windows there. But in a lot of cases, that's not gonna be worth it if you're not focused on that outdoor area. So if you're not worried about the outdoor coverage, just draw the walls and ignore the windows, I would say. But you can always add that if you want more precise. You can spend as much time on this as you want. But even at a quick pass, you get a good idea of what the coverage will look like, and this can help guide your decisions about where to place APs, where to place cameras, and so on. So there you can see like a simulated coverage. Now this is on 6 gigahertz. So most of you will know that with each of the Wi-Fi bands, the coverage is very different. 2.4 is going to be the largest, but it's going to be the most contested, most noisy wireless environment. So I don't recommend you design networks around 2.4 coverage these days. I would focus on at least 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz is going to be a smaller range. There's more noise than there is on 6 gigahertz, but it's going to definitely be a better option for most clients as opposed to 2.4. And then 6 gigahertz will be, if you guys want the best performance, the best experience for clients. I do recommend, with our Wi-Fi 7 platform being so mature, I recommend going and designing your deployments with Wi-Fi with 6 gigahertz in mind. So 6 gigahertz is going to be the smallest coverage of all three, but it's going to be the least prone to interference, and it's going to support the most throughput and bandwidth. So your customers will, if you deploy around 6 gigahertz, have good coverage for that. If your customer can connect with their phone wherever they're at on 6 gigahertz, do a speed test, they'll see really impressive numbers as opposed to if they're connecting on 2.4 especially, or 5 gigahertz. But yeah, I do recommend when you're planning these, just consider which band you're choosing. You can select it down there in the bottom right. You can switch between the different bands and you can get an idea of how the coverage differs for each band. Most for APs now, like our newer APs are all going to be for the most part tri-bands. They do all three. It's a good thing to see. I do recommend when you're deploying a lot of access points to disable 2.4 on some of those access points because it gets very noisy very quickly. But that's just a little brief wireless. I know it's not the subject of the call today, but just some helpful tips there when you're considering coverage for Wi-Fi. Now you can do the same thing that you're doing for Wi-Fi with our cameras. What's cool is you can place. Let me see. Actually, I'll show you an example in just a minute of what that looks like. But you can actually, using these walls, you can see based on which camera model you choose what the viewing angle is. You can see what would be the estimated coverage of that camera within that real life environment. So how far can you see? If you have it deployed right in front of a wall, you're not going to see very far no matter what angle you have. But this allows you, if you draw on the walls, you can actually see what the coverage of each camera will be. So it's a good way to check and make sure that you've got good coverage. When it comes to like a parking lot, you don't want to have a lot of blind spots in an exterior area, especially in front of doors. You definitely want to consider that. I did just see a question here. I will come to the Q&A after we finish this section here, the slide deck before we do our demo. I'll answer a lot of questions, but I will say that there is an option to do multi-floor. I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. It's still not, we're still adding more features to this all the time. So the interactions between floors and different coverage is not really fully calculated at this point. So you need to consider that when you're deploying it. What's one floor on top of the other? What's the coverage going to look like in terms of interference? But again, if we're focused on 6 gigahertz, it's not going to be as much of a problem. But yeah, I'll show you all that when we do the demo. We can also draw. A cool thing about this, you can actually use this tool to help simulate and estimate the cable length. So this is an important consideration when you're deploying in like a larger deployment. Area wise, sometimes you have to consider that there's a maximum cable length depending on which PoE that you're using and everything. There's a maximum cable length that you need to make sure that your device is you're not wiring 5,000 feet a mile from a PoE port, right? That's not going to work. You need to make sure that you know what the limits are based on that the PoE type and everything. But you can actually estimate your cable lengths, and you can also estimate how much cable you need if you're going to be running all new cables for new construction. You can use this tool to automatically draw cable connections from the switch rack all the way to all the different devices where they're mounted. The cool thing is you can draw on this. You can select, if you go click draw cables, it's that little icon on the bottom. It looks like a little connector with 2 different nodes on it. That you can draw cable routes, which, let's say where the conduit is through your building. Some floor plans will show that. So if you have that information, make sure that you put that onto your floor plan. Make sure it's accurate. This obviously isn't what it's going to look like in real life. But once you've drawn this conduit, you know what the conduit looks like. You can then go ahead and auto draw the cables, and it will automatically, using that conduit to route the cables through, will automatically tie every cable in and provide an estimated cable length from that switch rack all the way to that access point or to that camera. Really nice feature, and it allows you to estimate how much cabling you're going to need. So if you want it to be precise, make sure you draw your cable routes and all of that. If you do auto draw without having this, it's just going to tether all the devices directly to the switch, which isn't going to necessarily be accurate, especially since you can't just run cables directly to every device through whatever materials you're going through. You're going to have to use that conduit to be able to route the cables, especially if you're going through hard surfaces and things like that. Let me show you what it looks like once you've done auto draw. You can click that auto draw with connections there button in the top right, and then it automatically draws that connection from that center server rack that I placed, and through all that conduit, it's drawing all the cables from each of those devices to back to the switch. And you can see here what the run is for each one of these down to the foot. I've got 107 foot from this U7 Pro XG all the way back to the switch. And this is a great way for you to get a better estimate of how much cable you're going to need. Like if you're just guessing, it's going to be tough to guess that. I do recommend calculating that and have a good understanding, but also know there needs to be some room for error, because in every real world environment, there's going to be, logistical issues, maybe something that's obstructing the cable where you have to route it around something to conceal it, and that's going to add some length to that. So just try to use this as a baseline and be conservative and get enough cabling so you don't get to site and actually go and cable everything and then realize you're short by a few hundred feet. right? But yeah, that's a really nice resource that this tool provides and something that can be really helpful. But you do the auto draw, and it's going to save you a lot of time of actually manually clicking that. You can manually click it and connect it all, but this is going to be a lot faster. Now, like I mentioned, you can actually place a rack cabinet on your on your floor plan. So like in this case, there's an actual server IT room on this office floor plan. I can place the rack there, and then I can specify what size rack it is, and I can fill up this rack with all the different UniFi device I'm gonna be deploying, even down to like having Keystone patch panels there for helping me visualize what this looks like. What's cool about this, if let's say you're planning a deployment as a part of your MSP business, but you have an installer that is going to be doing the job for you. Maybe it's a new installer that you're working with that's going to be doing this install, and you want to make sure that they understand what your vision is. Instead of having to describe this all, what's cool about this is it gives them, you can actually send an installer link to them that provides them an actual display of the rack, including which port goes to which device and everything that you can use to provide to an installer to make sure that everything goes to plan when they're on site. This is a really nice resource and something I do recommend you take advantage of. Now you can specify whatever you want here in this rack, and you can use all our different products that we have. You can see here all the different things you can add on there. But of course, this is just here to help you plan and to help you get an idea of how much space you're going to need on your rack. Now, we also generate, as a part of this, a topology. So you can automatically generate topologies when you're drawing your devices. You're placing your devices, you can actually adjust the topology to make sure all the cables are plugged into which port and everything. You can actually adjust this after the fact. Where this is a really nice thing. And if you're going to give that installer link, you see there in the top left, share installer link. It allows me to enter an email address of an installer. It then will provide them that list of all the ports and which go into each device. And if I've fine-tuned that to make sure every port's what I want it to be, then we have a reasonable expectation that we can achieve that. And then when you need to go on site in the future, if you need to go on and service that, you can have some confidence and hopefully that they'll have installed it properly based on the plans. But this is a great resource to help facilitate that communication. Like I said, here you can go here into the devices. You can change the ports here. So what I did here is automatically sometimes it's not going to be perfect. Like it's not always going to recognize that a 10 gig interface device, like our U7 Pro XG, has a 10 gigabit Ethernet interface on it. And this Enterprise Campus 48 switch has a mixture of 2.5 gig ports and 10 gig ports. Now, automatically, if I just auto draw it, it might not always put them on the 10 gig switch ports, but you can adjust that here on this view. Click on the port next to the device and change it to one of the 10 gig ports. As you can see here, those 4 ports there in the middle are the 10 gig ports that it's connected to, and this allows you to specify exactly which SFP port you want to be connected to which switch and so on. All right. So that kind of I think gives us a good place to pause for a minute before we go into we're about halfway through our webinar today, but it gives us some chance to answer some questions real quick before we go on to the demo. Let me go ahead and open up the Q&A and see if we have anything there. All right, let's go through here. So I can use this tool to recreate an elevator project. I have a project in hands right now using 2 elevator kits, so I need to be sure about the integration. Now, you can absolutely, if you have all the floors, the elevators are kind of a unique case since the elevator is going to be moving between floors, so you just need to worry about what's on the outside of the elevators and also what's on the elevator, making sure you have the proper connection to be able to facilitate that with our elevator hub and everything. You can have a reader inside of the elevator that you can then require someone to swipe to be able to access the floor. Hit their NFC card, I guess, to be able to access a particular floor with their elevator hub. What I would say is just make sure you have maybe in the location where the hub will be installed, have all that stuff laid out. But yeah, you can put multiple floors there with including what equipment you're going to need on each floor. If you're going to have a reader on each floor, for instance, to be able to swipe and to be able to access, you can do that as well. Yeah. Now looks like I got a question from Brendan. I've seen a talk with UniFi solution experts. How does that service work, billing, scheduling, etc.? So I think you're talking about our UniFi experts program. Basically, what the UniFi experts program is it's for those We get a lot of requests for pre-sales requests. Sometimes I get involved with these myself. Usually it's going to be, we can't respond to all of those. And it's going to be really, typically large deployments or really complex deployments that need beyond typical assistance. What's cool about working with distributors though, like Flytech has people on hand that know the products and can help you offer recommendations if you need more assistance to what we can provide. We're a pretty lean company and we don't always have the resources. The design tool can be used to do a sanity check on your deployment, but ultimately it's going to be, if you want to use the expert service, you may get a response from our team. We just get so many requests that it's going to usually be allocated to those kind of more higher scale deployments or more complex deployments. But you are welcome to reach out to that service or work with Flytech, and they can help you as well. Any other questions you found, Pedro, from the chat that I need to answer right now?
I see one here on the rack planner. Can you put in generic, e.g., non-Ubiquiti equipment?
Not currently, but you could leave gaps. You can definitely design and leave in gaps, and then after the fact, you can go ahead and indicate when you print out that PDF with the rack view. You can just write in there that this is supposed to be this device or whatever.
Okay, here's another one. Can we modify in the future where we want to connect the device to firewall or switch when we draw the cable lines?
So right now there's an improvement that needs to be made where if you use the rack, it's not going to automatically connect all the devices together. I mean, most of you guys know whenever you have a rack, if you have a gateway, you're going to connect your internet, your internet connection from the modem into your gateway device, and then connect that gateway device to your switch, usually over fiber ports. And then from that switch, we'll connect to all the, the devices that are downstream. You can't currently, it doesn't currently draw the connections between all the switches and the devices within the rack, but a workaround for that right now, don't use that rack view if you want to have a full topology, and you can actually place the devices and then draw cables between those devices manually to indicate what order you want everything to be in. So that's a good way to make sure that you're getting that 100% accurate topology. Forget about the rack view, putting the rack on there, just place the devices on there yourself, put in a Fortress gateway, 2 switches, and then you can draw the connections yourself and make sure that it's going in the order that you want it to. And then after you've done that, you can adjust fully what port's going to what and everything, and make sure the right SFP port's going to the right device, and so on. So that's what I would recommend to work around that right now. We're working on addressing that current issue, but we will be fixing it in the future.
Here's another one regarding several floors. It says, how do I show a connection from floor 1 to floor 2?
So I can show you what that looks like in practice, but yeah, I think we still need some improvements made to the floor. We'll take a look at it together when we're doing the demo just now. Okay. Any other questions for me?
Right now, for now.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, I'm gonna switch to this tab. So what I was gonna do today is I was gonna upload a floor plan of a school, and I'll show you how quick it is to upload that floor plan. So this is a nearby grade school in a town close to me. I'll go ahead and let's say that we want to deploy. Now, these are just there for your information. This doesn't affect the deployment at all, but you can choose the deployment type. We can choose school. We can choose the product preference, value, performance, but ultimately that's not going to change much, except for maybe the recommended devices and things. I haven't really looked at it much, but I wouldn't worry too much about this. We'll go ahead and create that now. And so this takes us to this screen where I can upload a floor plan. I'm gonna go ahead and upload the floor plan that I found out today on just Googling floor plans, and I'm gonna use this as a way to I'm gonna use this as a starting point. So this is not a perfect floor plan. Of course, I would recommend getting something that's more accurate, feasibly. Looks like this was maybe drawn over a physical map, but it works for what we're going to do today. So what I mentioned today, if we know the dimensions of one of the walls, so let's say we know that this wall here is 50 feet, we can go ahead and draw that scale, and now we can see there the scale listed, so we can see exactly what we can get an idea of what's the distance between each location. Now, once I've done that, the next step would be going ahead and drawing the walls. I'll click down here on the Draw Walls button, and let's just say that the school is all concrete exterior. You can see here the effect that this has on the signal strength. So this is going to cause a degradation of the signal. So concrete is the hardest to penetrate. However thick that concrete is going to influence this, but this is our base estimate based on real world uses. But what we'll do now is we can go ahead and draw. Now we have two options when we do walls. We can either draw an individual wall or we can do a room. If you have a lot of individual rooms, this is a good way to go, I think, for especially interior walls. When you have something that doesn't really just follow a box format, I recommend just doing individual walls this way. So we can do here, we can start by drawing these walls. And it's pretty fast, as you see here. It doesn't take a lot of clicking. And I just left click and I go to each one of these different different portions of the building. And so you can see here, looks like this is like exterior area. Now there we got the exterior walls drawn, and then for drawing the interior walls, what you can do then is you can either draw the, change it to drywall, and you can click and drag these. Let's say it's an interior wall. I'm not saying this is exactly what this would be, but you can do, when you know your own deployment, you can change this to whatever you want. But you can just start drawing across all the rooms. You can see here how kind of fast this is to do and how easy this is and straightforward. Even for a building this size, it wouldn't take you a whole lot of time to draw all the different rooms that you need. And you can add on walls. So if you have a case like this where you have an interior wall here, you can just click and add those additional walls there and so on. But yeah, I think that's you can kind of see how easy this is and how it's made to be pretty straightforward and pretty simple. Here we go. But I won't do the whole thing because this will take a little bit extra time, but you can see here it's still pretty it doesn't take a lot of work to be able to put one of these together. And this just shows the customer versus giving them an idea of what you're going to just provide them a number of products you're going to deploy. It's a lot better for you to be able to provide a simulated coverage map proactively so that you can help close the deal that way. But so now we can go ahead and place the devices on here. So let's say we know what devices we want. We can go ahead and start placing these devices and see how those walls will influence the signal strength. We have all of our access points are on here. And what's cool about this is that we're actually using our actual RF, our radiation patterns from the actual devices themselves. And then we use that scale to draw and to adjust this. So this is based on real world testing on these devices where we test the antennas and how they behave. And then we use that to provide an accurate estimate. Now, of course, it's always a good idea if you have a really, let's say you're deploying at a stadium and you're going to deploy 200 access points in an indoor stadium. If that's the case, you're going to have to be very sensitive to interference, and there may be differences in how these devices actually play out in real life. This is a great planning tool, I think. But site surveys is always something you may consider doing and is recommended for large deployments or complex deployments. But for small business deployments and things like this, it's going to be adequate in most cases, and will give you a good estimate, especially if you don't have the option to go on site. It's going to be really helpful. And then you can actually use our Wi-Fi Man app to get on site to do a basic site survey walkthrough. There's other tools out there. You're welcome to use those. I know there's a lot of good options there. But this is just there to help if you need it. But so let's go ahead and start placing access points here. So you can see here, this is based on 5 gigahertz. If I switch to 6 gigahertz here, let's go ahead and go Wi-Fi, change to 6 gigahertz. We can get an idea for how these devices perform differently. So let's go ahead and go to Wi-Fi. We'll place, as an example, I'll show you this is one of our older access points. It doesn't have 60 gigahertz. It's not going to show up anything on 60 gigahertz, right? So for our products that have 60 gigahertz, like our E7, these actually support longer range coverage, but you can compare that to like our U7 Pro for what you would need for a school this size. So in this case, maybe for the library, we'd want to have maybe 2 access points, and it depends on how many students are going to be there. But you can use this to kind of get an idea of how many access points, and you can use this as a baseline. And then if you get on site, have room in your budget for a few additional access points to fill in areas where there's not quite as much coverage or where there's weaker signal. But you can see here, even for a larger school, it scales pretty well. Which I don't have all the walls drawn, but there's not a whole lot of interference from drywall only. But you will definitely see that with the concrete. Look at that when I put it right on the other side of that wall. Look how much little signals coming through that concrete. So you can see here that's pretty. And the scale here, if you want to see what the scale is, you can actually highlight each of these areas, and then it will show on the meter what the signal strength is actually like. So minus 70 dBm, which would be, it's still good enough for a connection, but we recommend designing generally around, green signals, especially when we're talking about 60 gigahertz, because the coverage is always going to depend also on the client device and how strong it's able to transmit and everything. But you can see here, that's how we can place all those. We can very quickly place those devices and get an idea of how many APs we need. So if we want to see how many we need for this whole deployment, maybe we just keep going through here. And maybe we don't need to worry about the gym area because someone needs to be on their phone when they're playing basketball. All right. So we won't prioritize that. But you can get a pretty good idea of how many access points you need, and then use this as a base build materials that you can modify based on real life conditions. So, but let me show you just an example of how, we mentioned that the E7 does long range 6 gigahertz. So you guys can see here how much more coverage you get from using the E7 with 6 gigahertz, because it supports the longer range 6 gigahertz, that it's going to be more similar to 5 gigahertz in its coverage. Then 6 gigahertz is usually smaller. But let's look at 5 gigahertz. You can see here, there's definitely plenty of signal. And then 2.4 is going to be pretty noisy. And if, like I mentioned earlier, I recommend for a school like this, you're going to want to disable 2.4 on half at least of the APs, if not more than that, maybe 2/3 of them. You want to make sure there's good enough quality, minimal interference so they can still connect, while prioritizing, 5 or 6 gigahertz for all the laptops and, the more recent and more current client devices. All right, so that's the Wi-Fi. Now let me show you how the cameras work here too. So this is a cool thing that we can do. If you're planning on deploying cameras and you want to see what the different coverage would be like for each of the camera models, you can look through all of our cameras. Now we've got them separated into bullet form factor, which you'll recognize here. We just released the G6 Bolt, which is a good scalable 4K, has AI and everything on it. It's a good value for a school. If you're going to have a lot of cameras, it's going to be pretty good price point. But think about for you can have it for the hallways here, where what device you want to have deployed in the hallways. How do you want to have them deployed? A lot of times people will deploy things like in when they need more coverage, or when they'll have a wider angle lens, like something like our AI 360. You can see here it covers a pretty large area, like somewhere like a gym or something like that. Now, and so that's a pretty high coverage. Whereas let's go with the AI dome. What this is going to do is within that angle, it's gonna provide coverage of all this. But you can see here it only goes as far as the walls. So you draw these walls on the floor plan, you get actually a really good estimate of what the coverage is going to look like and how many of these that you're going to need. But for the outdoor, you can see here we can go place these devices in the outdoor, and you can see these are weatherproof and so on. So we can use the G6 turrets if we want to have these for the exterior building. You can also see how you can have, we sell different mounts where you have these mounted back to back, where you can have 2 of them mounted back to back like this. Then you get more coverage, and it's just as simple as adjusting it this way to change the orientation of that camera. But you can see here, by having 2 of these mounted next to each other with different facing directions, you get full coverage of everything that's going on out there. So just check out the different camera options that are there and get a feel for which one, how each one of these work. Like the G4 PTZ Industrial is going to have a lot of coverage. It has 22x zoom too, so in reality it's going to depend on where this is pointed at. It's not going to be able to point at everything at one time, but you can point in any direction. It's going to be able to do and follow movement and things like that. But we have all our models there. But you can see here now, if we select, we can select the Wi-Fi, we can switch seamlessly to cameras. And then when we have the walls drawn here, so for the indoor models, I recommend using in a school or something like this. A good example that's really scalable and price or cost effective would be these Dome Ultras. They're small devices, and they cost $129 each. So it's a good, really cost effective and a larger deployment. So maybe in all your hallways you have periodically you have one of these facing opposite directions every so often that will provide full coverage of the whole facility. But yeah, that's how you use the camera overview. So now I mentioned the cabling before too. So here, no cables are currently drawn. But I mentioned earlier, if you want to get a more accurate topology and have everything exactly in the order you want, what you can do is you can just go ahead and place what your gateway. Let's say you're going to use our UniFi. Let's say you're going to use our Enterprise Fortress gateway, for instance. If you're going to use our Enterprise Fortress gateways for something like a school, that's great. We can put that into the actual server room, wherever that's going to be, which I don't know where that, here's a tech office, for instance. Maybe we have a server rack there. We can put the Fortress gateway there. We can put, let's say we put two Enterprise Campus 48s here. And what you can do is you can draw the cables manually between these just to make sure you have, your topology will like fully populated. And then what you can do then is draw those cable routes I mentioned. If you know where the conduits ran, let's say that we have conduit ran through all these classrooms, etc. You can just draw that here, and it's going to use this automatically when it's generating the the cables. I'll auto draw the cables. So now if I go to auto draw the connections, it's connected all the cables to the conduit there. And where the conduit extends, if it needs to go out to the device, you see the individual cable being ran out to that device, right? So there we go. We've got that. And now we can see here on the topology here, we've got everything listed. Now it's hard to see everything because you've got all these different devices, but you can scale through, look at all of these. And what I mentioned before earlier, if you want to modify the ports view, you can look at the port view here. Now, what I'd recommend in this case, you're not going to want to have, if you have the Enterprise campus switch, you probably want to use that either the 10 gig or the 25 gig SFP port to connect to the switch here. You just need to make sure that I have this have the compatible port here. So we'll choose one of these, say port 49. There we go. We've got a connection now between the gateway and the switch over that port. You can have it connected to an aggregation switch, and then the aggregation switch connected over fiber to all the access switches and so on. But this is how you modify all this. Now, in this case, the U7 Pros don't have 10 gig interfaces, so it doesn't really matter what they're assigned. And the same goes for these other. The cameras aren't going to use that. They're not going to have a multi-gig interface either. So, but basically everything looks fine here. But if you want to make a change here, you can go ahead and change this. If you want to use one of the 10 gig ports, you can change it to port 48, and then now it shows up in that order. And you can make edits to whatever you want to do here, but it's just, I would just balance it. If it's beneficial, like if you really want them to use particular ports, then you just need to make sure you have that adjusted so that the installer knows what to do. But there you go. We've got the port view and everything. We then have a equipment list with estimated cable length here too. So you can see what this looks like. If you want to buy it through Flytech, you can take a screenshot of it or do a PDF export. Like I mentioned earlier, you can export this as PDF, and you can take that and email it to Flytech, and ask them for which products they have in stock, and go about setting up that order. And then we mentioned multi-floor. All we have to do multi-floors here is we're just going to go ahead and, you see where he said the multi-floor button here. You can do is just go ahead and add another floor. You can actually duplicate, in some apartments. Sometimes you're going to have an apartment layout. Like, let me show you an example. This apartment layout, you might have all the floors be the same layout, and then in which case you can just duplicate and go in between the floors here to each of the different floors. So, and that's how you get to manage the multi-floors. You can specify the roof height, which in the past we had this tied to the actual coverage, because of course you're mounted on a 40. This is something you're going to consider right now. If you're deploying this in a warehouse and your AP is mounted 40 feet up in the air, it's going to be a different coverage than if it's mounted 8 feet in the air. So you need to make sure when you're adjusting this. I think in the future it previously worked like this, but we'll have this in the future to where it's going to adjust. You can see it does adjust somewhat based on this. So depending on so I think you can see there are some adjustments made there, but I think there's some improvements that could still, maybe it needs to be a little more accurate. But in any case, just make sure to check this when you're adjusting height. It doesn't look like it's working properly, so maybe they already fixed it. but you can you can change the ceiling height, and that's going to change and impact the coverage of the devices. But when you're doing a warehouse, just make sure to think about that, how it's going to impact if you're mounting really high in the air, and make sure to double check that information. But here you can specify the height of every floor and how tall it is. And then from the topology view, you can see here, this has got all the floors. Currently, I think you can go in here to the port view, and then you can make adjustments here between these devices. But I don't think right now, to your answer question about multi-floor, I don't think it's currently functional automatically yet. It looks like we need to improve that. But hopefully we'll have some fixes on that in the near future. But we're adding a ton of stuff here. We've got some really cool things coming in the future too. So we just added the share installer link here. We're going to be adding ability to basically simulate a deployment too. We're going to be bringing a demo simulator. I don't know if any of you guys remember when we used to have demo.ui.com. I love that website. It was really cool. We had an actual sandbox environment where you could test out the software experience. We're working on putting together an ability to simulate individual designs in a software experience, so you get an idea of what the software would be like to manage it from what you've put into the design tool. So look for something like that in the future. We're looking at that and we're working on that. Hopefully we'll have something there before too long. But we're going to be making a lot of other features too that are designed around integrators and MSPs, and this idea of actually configuring in advance. So when you plug in the devices, like zero touch provision, they'll automatically pull down the configuration and everything. So we have a whole blueprinting feature set that's coming to this platform and to our products that will allow you to plan out deployments in advance, to configure them, and then use that kind of cookie cutter blueprint to deploy out to other sites. So this is really nice for let's say you're a large IT department that manages insurance offices across the country. If you have similar office layouts and you want to start from the same template, the same VLANs and everything, we're going to have blueprints where you can basically take that blueprint, apply it to all these new deployments, and then have zero touch provisioning. So when these devices are plugged in, they automatically pull down that configuration and are on the right site and everything. So we've got a whole platform coming out. I expect it pretty soon, but look forward to that and the ability to manage all this. It's going to be integrated with the Design Center. So there's a lot of cool changes coming in the near future. Just stay tuned for that. This is going to keep evolving, but right now there's so much you can do with it. If you want to export as a PDF, you can just click here. You can upload your own company logo to put your logo there, and you can put your own company name. It allows you to have your own branding on it, so it looks like it's something that comes from your company, as opposed to we want you to be empowered to be able to make your sales and to manage your business. And so this is going to look more polished if you have your own logo and everything updated there. But yeah, pretty cool. The export has like an equipment list, has the floor plans, camera coverage, port view, rack view, Wi-Fi coverage, topology. All this is going to be included in that, and we'll keep seeing this evolves. I expect it will in the future, but there you go. Cool. I think that kind of provides a pretty good overview. Now, what I mentioned before is you actually can put any of our products out there. So including like our UNAS Pro, which is our network storage device. We have things like EV stations. You can go ahead and place these EV station chargers out in a parking lot if you want to. You can connect those back to the switches. And what's cool about the rack view here, like I mentioned this earlier, this does provide a check on your PoE power to make sure that you have enough PoE power to connect all these devices. So this is a nice way to kind of do a sanity check, make sure that you're not exceeding the amount of power that your devices require. And what's cool is we'll give you an indicator if you do exceed that. So like if I go place, let's see what I have here. Let's go ahead and start placing a bunch of. And I have to tell you, this stuff can handle a pretty good scale here. So we're putting taxing a little bit right now. Let's see what we can do. We're gonna go ahead now and let's go ahead and do draw cables. Auto draw the cables. And you see here now we've got an indicator, this error, you've exceeded the power output on this rack. So you can see here, I'm going to select back to select here. I can go ahead and get more information. I click select in the info here, and you can see here I'm at 1249 watts used out of 760 available wattage. So that's going to help you troubleshoot an issue. And what that would mean is for me is I need to change my switch model to be able to support all that. Of course, be able to support all of that. So let's go ahead and switch this out. Let's throw in a few. Provide some provide some other products here, the whole list of them. But in this case, you can see the wattage here. So if we need more wattage, there we go. We add that, and now we're within our wattage allocation there because it can handle quite a bit of power. But there you go. That's our design tool. Any questions for me now that we're in this? I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Somebody asked if you can put a UNVR in the design center, Andrew.
Yes, you can. Yep. What you'll do is you go in here to the rack, go in your settings, and now I'm gonna change this to be a 42U rack because then I'll have a lot more room, and I can go ahead and add a device. Go to network video recorder, and then I've got our UNVR, the network video recorder, NVR Pro, or the EMVR there. So you see there, I can go ahead and add that in.
Somebody is saying, I would like to have I guess it's a future request when you export the document to have the devices with numbers on it or the name you change it to. When I export it, it only shows the devices without the names. Can you do that? Maybe for the future?
Yeah, I'll note that. I do know you can use it. You can use ports right here, but it's not. But you want some sort of indicator or custom name that you can be able to put on the, like when you rename it here, you want it to show up as that in there. I'll take your word for it that it's not showing up in the export, and I'll actually pass this off directly as a fix to our devs following our call today.
Okay, here's another interesting question. Is it generally better to install smaller access points and more of them, or a larger one and less quantity?
That's a great question. Every deployment is different. So with Wi-Fi is kind of my main area of expertise. So I'm glad you asked me a question about wireless. But basically, I think it depends on the application. So and it also depends on what we talked about earlier. If we're talking about which Wi-Fi band these clients are relying on. So let's take it, for example, I mentioned the warehouses earlier. A lot of warehouses are very unique RF environments, very different than deploying in like an office building. Because what's different about a warehouse is you have really high roofs, or you have a high ceiling, you have long shelving. A lot of times, 20-foot shelving there, a lot of times with very densely packed materials that can create more interference. So a lot of times we design, and then so when you design this, you have a unique kind of like layout where a lot of times people deploy access points with directional antennas that are specified. Like we offer APs that have external antenna connectors, and you can get exactly the kind of if you're going to mount at the ceiling, you can get a connector or a antenna that's going to have exactly the narrow beam width you want to fit down those aisles to be long and skinny, and you can mount it there, and that's going to reach through the aisle without bouncing off like omnidirectional off both of those the shelving units and everything, especially if you have a lot of metal parts on those things. But so that's like a whole different deployment consideration with which devices you use based on the coverage. But what's different about a warehouse too is you have a lot of times in warehouses, you have what client devices need to connect. It's usually not going to be, it's not going to be like laptops. People aren't sitting there working on laptops very often. It's going to be a lot of mobility devices, like things like scanners, scanners that are connected. They can do, you can scan in a new pallet and adjust the inventory report, things like that. And so a lot of times these devices have, they're not going to use a lot of throughput, but they're going to need good connectivity. They're going to be roaming because they're going to be on forklifts. They're going to be on different devices. So you need to make sure to have really good coverage, but bandwidth isn't going to be as big of a deal. And with some of these older devices, like these scanners and things, sometimes they're going to use, they're not going to have 60 gigahertz on these, and typically it's not necessary. So in that case, maybe you design a little different. You design towards 5 gigahertz coverage all throughout the building, or if these devices only support 2.4, you focus on getting low interference 2.4 gigahertz coverage that allows and facilitate the roaming experience they need. And that's just a different approach. So just know your deployment, and I'd say in most cases it's more valuable generally to have more devices and instead of more coverage on one device. And the reason I say that is because in real world use case environments, every client device, we cannot control how client devices connect to our access points. Client devices are limited by their own chipset, by their own adapter. And so some of these wireless adapters are going to be just very basic 1x1 or 2x2, and they're going to be not very high quality chips. And so it's going to create, it's going to have hard to have a good connection. So even if an AP can reach a client device, that client device might not be as good as sending the information back. And so what's good about having a very that's the great thing about the access point model is everybody used to have these wireless routers that try to cover as much as they could. But now when we have access point, with such an access point model, we can facilitate a really good roaming experience where everywhere you go throughout the whole large deployment, you can have good signal everywhere throughout that building and have that automatic roaming experience if you fine tune that coverage. So I'd say when it comes down to it, generally speaking, you want to have adequate coverage. But the thing to keep in mind is 2.4 gigahertz is a different beast. You don't necessarily want to add more 2.4 gigahertz APs to improve performance, because a lot of times you're going to create more problems than you solve by doing that. So just know what clients need. If you're focused on 6 gigahertz, it's definitely going to be more APs, smaller coverage cells.
All right. The last question here, is it possible to change cable color in order to identify different networks like data, security, access?
I think that is not currently possible now. Now we can change cable here. We can change from these two different here. We can change from CMP, CMR, and existing cable, but unfortunately, it's not going to be. It doesn't seem like it's going to allow me to do any custom colors. That'll be another feature request I can recommend in the future. I just want to say thanks to everyone for attending today, and thanks for all your good questions. We'll keep working on this project, keep adding more and more features. But I do hope that you're able to use this and take advantage of this tool, and I'm excited for you to see the features that are coming out in the next few months.